Let's talk about Democrat Senator Jasmine Crockett. She's been brutally roasted online and possibly fair enough. I'll get your opinion in a second, but she made these comments about DEI and she almost admits that she told her boss that she should hire her because of her skin colour.
When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy.
Alex, should she be roasted for this online? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm in Dallas. Speaking of Dallas, this is her district. Now, I have an office in South Dallas, and South Dallas is a predominantly African-American neighborhood. And so she basically won because of the color of her skin. And she admits that. I mean, that's not a secret. And I'm not surprised how the media is hyping her up because, you know, if you look at the roster of Democratic leaders, you know, from that party that are even inspiring whatsoever, even Jasmine Crockett acting all, you know, crazy, that is actually inspiring because there's nobody to look up to. You know, when all the players stink, even a player that's batting like, you know, 200, you're going to be like, well, you know, I like that player. She's the best player in the game for the Democratic Party. She's like AOC Jr. So I have to give it up for Jasmine Crockett for going from a nobody to somebody with literally zero talent, less talent than AOC, I might add. And, you know, it is what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't have even more political success by doing these weird things and having these flubs and us talking about it. It helps her. There's 342 congressmen and women, and it's hard to stick out. And she does it on the daily, and she's not even trying.
Admitting she's a DEI hire. Didn't expect that one. The Trump administration has frozen federal funding to Maine for refusing to comply with Trump's executive order to ban men in women's sports. So Trump initially vowed to cut federal funding to the state if it refused to comply with the order. That was back in February. And now Donald Trump has made good on that promise. Alex, the warning was there.
Yeah, but, you know, this is a serious thing. I you know, went viral because I wore a women's bathing suit, a one-piece, to a city council meeting, and that video got like tens of millions of views. And, you know, it was really dumb. But this is a serious thing where there's young girls that are being injured. Like, you know, San Jose State had a player that was just injuring other players in women's volleyball. So, you know, there's an unfair advantage, and it's just obvious that there needs to be some sort of protection for female athletes. You know, that's who we're looking out for, the females. And there should be trans athletes. They should be in their own division. I think it's that simple. Or they run in their biological, you know, sex. It's not that complicated. And I'm happy that Donald Trump's doing that to actually protect sports, which is important in America. That's like all we got. That's like the last thing America's actually, you know, prideful about. So we really need to protect, like Caitlin Clark, women's basketball. I thought Leah Thomas, the transgender swimmer, I thought that kind of ruined women's sports. I'm not even kidding, because this is a transgender person who became the best female college swimmer, ranked #1, previously ranked 400th as a man. But then Caitlin Clark basically came out of nowhere, a great college player, and has changed the WNBA and almost saved that whole entire league. So it only takes a few great female athletes to fix this whole thing. So, and I think Caitlin Clark's proved that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Hunter Biden and the laptop scandal. It's been revealed that the FBI silenced an employee who tried to tell Twitter that the Hunter Biden laptop story was actually real on the day it came out. So newly released internal FBI chat logs indicate that the agency imposed a gag order on its employees regarding discussions about Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, I'm not surprised, but how concerning is this, Alex?
I mean, it's very concerning, but it's, you know, welcome to Obviousville. The FBI is going to lie to us. I mean, we all know it because they have classified levels of information that people like you and I are not ever going to be privy to unless you get it, you know, in some sort of covert way. But when it comes to the Hunter Biden stuff, we knew it was real. They did it to protect Joe. I'm surprised that he got that protection. I'm just really surprised at the lack of integrity when it comes to our mainstream journalism, that it was the New York Post, I believe, and they got censored on Twitter for even sharing it. Then, no offense to the New York Post, a great outlet. Good for them. They actually print a lot of stuff that a lot of people won't. But my point is, the New York Post is breaking this. It should be the New York Times. Why is the New York Times not saying the son, of the president has a laptop with all kinds of stuff, potentially, allegedly, some stuff, potentially some of the most disgusting content possible, and drugs for that matter. And, the fact that they would even cover that up just shows that there's zero integrity when it comes to the journalistic institutions here in America.
And there's more bad news for Hunter Biden. He'll be permanently stripped of his ability to practice law in the nation's capital after agreeing to a disciplinary agency disbarment recommendation. So Hunter Biden, he was convicted, of course, but he was pardoned by his father, Joe Biden. So, look, this is the situation for Hunter Biden. He's been protected by his father, but he's not going to be able to practice law. What's your assessment?
Well, he doesn't practice law anyway. He's a painter. You know what I mean? That's what he was doing, selling paintings for $300,000 to, I think, Chinese diplomats, or diplomats from a lot of foreign countries would buy his art because he's such a talented painter. So, yeah, I don't think he's necessarily the Atticus Finch of this generation. I don't imagine him in the court of law unless he is the defendant. So, when it comes to Hunter, and, God bless his dad. If I was Hunter, I would hope that my dad would pardon me. So I really don't blame Joe Biden for pardoning his son. I think my dad would pardon me. I think all of our dads would pardon us if he truly loved us. They pardoned a bunch of other people that really didn't deserve it. So, but poor Hunter Biden, cry me a river. These guys had access to every single thing in the entire world, and he'd rather smoke crack and do a lot of other mischievous things. So I guess it just is what it is. It comes with the territory, and you reap what you sow. But I respect President Biden for actually giving him that pardon.
That is fair enough. I don't respect Joe Biden for lying about it. But we spoke about this last week, Alex, the NPR and PBS debacle and kind of the bias in its news coverage. Now, Donald Trump has called on Republicans to defund and totally dissociate themselves from public broadcasters, NPR and PBS. So in a post to Truth Social, Donald Trump said Republicans must defund and totally dissociate themselves from NPR and PBS, the radical left monsters that so badly hurt our country. Alex, there's no doubt plenty of support for this.
Well, yes, and then you saw when they were testifying in front of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene called out, I think it was maybe the president, or I forget what her official title was for PBS, and she said, we never showed any transgenders on PBS. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene, she pulled out a monitor and showed a timestamp of when it was played. So they don't even know what they're playing on their own network. So I honestly am empathetic to anybody that loses their job in PBS, and all those people that, I work in the media business. It's not easy and it's hard to find a gig, but the media that they're creating at PBS was all about Russiagate, Russiagate, Russiagate. That's all NPR did. So they were basically like TMZ for the Democrats. So I really have very little sympathy for them.
Yeah, and people are absolutely switching off them. Now, US Attorney General Pam Bondi has directed federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. He's, of course, the man accused of murdering United Health Group executive Brian Thompson in cold blood. So Mangione is scheduled to go on trial for murder charges in New York, which has not executed a convicted felon in more than 60 years. The 26-year-old is charged with shooting Brian Thompson outside a Midtown Manhattan hotel. We all saw those images that he's been accused of. And we also saw how bizarrely and horrifically the left responded. Many of them were cheering and dancing and applauding Luigi Mangione, who is an accused murderer. I mean, what's your reaction to what Pam Bondi is looking at, and also how the left is responding?
Well, how the left is responding, I was just on campus at the University of Texas at Dallas, and they had pamphlets with Luigi Mangione on it, and he has become basically kind of like a folk or cult hero to almost kind of like this communist Marxist idea where our healthcare system is messed up in America. It is not the best healthcare system. And so they've kind of used him as this, white knight for their cause. So, yeah, so he's actually viewed very favorably. But when it comes to the death penalty and Pam Bondi saying that, personally, and I know this is just my opinion, but our American criminal justice system is terrible. And I know there's some heinous crimes that, something, if anything happens to a child in some states, that they're trying to get death penalty for. And maybe that, I can almost understand. But if the state has ever wrongfully given somebody the death penalty, which they say through DNA they have proven that they have done that incorrectly, then I feel like the whole system is really flawed. So I don't really necessarily like the idea of even executing him. I just think his life will be absolutely terrible in prison, in solitary confinement. But that's just my personal opinion. I also don't think he's a hero. So it is just kind of a horrible situation. He's a murderer, but in this weird world we live in. Accused murderer, alleged murderer, accused murderer. But I'm just saying, in this world that we live in, there's very few heroes. You have Jasmine Crockett's a hero, and Luigi Mangione. I mean, believe it or not, it sounds fake, but it's actually real.
Yeah, isn't it bizarre? Look, I didn't think that I would be agreeing with Barack Obama on the program today, but it's been revealed that Obama was working against former Vice President Kamala Harris after Joe Biden dropped out, and he was advocating for an open primary because he didn't think that Kamala Harris could win. Well, he was actually onto something. So reporter and author Jonathan Allen said that Obama didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Joe Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for the Democrats, and he was working really hard behind the scenes for a long time to try and have a mini primary or an open convention, just something so she wasn't kind of given the job. He made those comments on the news to discuss his new book, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. I'm with Barack Obama on this one. Wilder things have happened. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Barack is, he's not a dumb guy. I don't know if anybody's ever accused him of being dumb. He's actually pretty smart when it comes to his social maneuvering and the way that he basically controls his political party. And I think that it doesn't take a brainiac to realize that Kamala Harris is not a talented politician. She doesn't have the gift of gab. She doesn't even have that kind of leadership quality that, Donald Trump or Barack Obama or even a Joe Biden has. She doesn't even have, any of what those three presidents have. And that's obvious. And Obama didn't like Biden either. Biden was just, he paid the most dues and he was kind of in line for that position. He ran for president like every year since he was like 35 or something. So, he earned it. He paid his dues. And that's the reason that he was in the position to be the vice president. And that's why he was in the position. And whether you think it was rigged or not, I know some people do and some people don't. He was the only guy to ever beat Trump. So believe it or not, for Biden being so untalented compared to Barack and how Barack looks poorly at Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is 10 million times worse than Joe Biden. And Barack knows that.
Well, finally, Alex, just before we run out of time, I have to talk to you about Wisconsin, and that will enshrine the state's voter ID law in the state constitution after voters approved the proposal. This happened yesterday. So Wisconsin already requires that voters have photo ID in order to participate at the polls, but the measure now elevates that law to a constitutional amendment. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, that's good. If you have to show your ID to get on an airplane, you have to show your ID to do anything, to buy alcohol, to buy tobacco. I mean, why not show your ID to vote? It doesn't even make sense. They say that showing your ID is racist. Yet if I wanted to go to Australia and I didn't have a passport, you guys would kick me out of there. I'm just saying, it's just everybody has rules that we have to follow. But for some reason, these people don't have to follow the same rules. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. This is a simple requirement, and it should be in the Constitution for the state of Wisconsin. And I'm happy that that is what's happening. But when you see these states fight for it so hard for no voter ID, something is sinister is at play. It's just, it doesn't add up when it comes to all the rules that we have to follow and show ID for, in contrast to voting, which is the most important thing. Doesn't make sense.
Comedian and host of Blaze TV's Prime Time with Alex Stein. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.